Welcome to How's Your ePresence? I am Mark Galvin, and we are glad you are here today. What do we do here on this show? We like to share ways that we can help you do digital marketing better. And we can get in a lot of our marketing things, not just digital, but we do spend a lot of time talking about digital things. So as a matter of fact, we're dropping all these great these different videos throughout the month. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you typically find us by just simply typing in how to and looking for the topic that you think is interesting. Like, for example, here's some quick shows that we've done recently. How to use audio branding to build your brand. Who knew that audio, the voice, can help you build your brand? How about this? How to optimize e-commerce sales. One more, and then I'll move on. What makes a good graphic for your brand? We talked about all of those things recently. You can go find those on our YouTube channel. We're always looking for great guests. We have a great guest today. We're good at finding super guests. However, if there's something you would like for us to talk about, let us know. We would be happy to run out there, find that person to answer that question, because we learn as much as you do every time we bring on these great guests. So if you're just tuning in, you can throw us a question, throw it right in the chat box. We love to answer questions live, and this helps keep our guests on their toes because they don't know what's coming at them. So send us a question, and we'd love to answer that. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we've got a guest on today that's going to talk about SEO. We're going to answer things like SEO and quality content. We're going to get into how to gain serious SEO traction. What's the anatomy of content strategy? That's a big one. How about this? We're going to talk about SEO Mythbusters. And the last one, which is at the bottom of the list, which I hope we get to all this, how to use keyword search to determine wants. And I'll tell you this, if we don't get all these, I got to feel we'll have this guest back. In the future, when you want to get back to the show, simply search for ePresence, how to make your SEO #rock the SEO basics. So if you're here, you've never been here before, if you would subscribe, and you'll find it on that side. There we go. Hit that subscribe button. If you do that, you'll get a notification when we go live. That way you can always tune us in, drop us put us in the background, and listen to all the great content that you'll be able to pick up in the middle of your workday. Let's see what else is on my list here. I think that's it. This is the last week of our webinar. We've been doing webinars to help people on LinkedIn for the last year. This is the last one we're offering. So make sure, if you would like a little help on your LinkedIn profile, jump in there. You'll see at the bottom of the screen right there, there's a link to our webinar. It's only $37.50. Normally it's $75. Join us there. We'd love to help you on your LinkedIn profile. Okay, so who's our guest today? Our guest is Liam Carnahan, and he is with Inkwell Content Services. So let me tell you a little bit about Liam. He's a content marketing and SEO specialist. You can tell I already want to talk to him. With 12 years of experience in the industry, his company, Inkwell Content, helps small and medium-sized businesses make their own websites rock. Liam also owns Invisible Ink Editing. So this is cool. This is a fiction, not a fictional. It's a real company. A fiction editing company for indie authors. Doesn't that sound interesting? So we're going to bring him on in just a moment here. Don't go away. Remember this. Make sure you throw questions at us. So if you've got a question, jump right there in the chat box, send it over to us. We'll be sure. I better click on that screen so I can see those questions. We'll be sure to ask those live to our guests. Well, let's bring Liam on. Where is he? Liam, are you there?
Hey, hi, Mark. Nice to be here.
Rock on. Glad that you're here. Where are you sitting? You're not, I don't think you're here in the southern U.S. as we are.
No, no, I'm way up in the Northeast in Maine, living on a beautiful lake. So I'm pretty lucky.
Well, that sounds really nice. It may get cold up there, but still sitting on a lake's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, it does get cold, but today's beautiful. So I'm pretty happy.
Awesome. I love that. So we're going to talk a little bit about SEO. This is your bailiwick, right? This is the thing that you're so good at. And I can't wait to hear some of this. So you okay if we just jump into it?
Let's go.
All right. First thing is, there is no SEO without quality content. And I think a lot of people understand what that means. But to you, why is quality content so important?
Yeah, so just like you said, you really can't do SEO if you aren't creating quality content. So it's quite common for people when they're first learning about SEO to get really overwhelmed by all of the talk about things like backlinks and keyword research. And there's a lot of this sort of technical, complicated stuff that is important, but none of it is nearly as important as writing high quality content that's tailored for your reader. And that's actually something that Google has come out and said to us too. They have basically said everything that we are watching for in terms of our algorithm and how we work is based around creating a high quality content experience for people on the internet. So when you want to work on SEO, yes, you do need to know, about keyword research and backlinks and, site speed. But if you don't have a really strong content creator to actually put together something that's entertaining, enjoyable, educational, it doesn't matter how much of the technical side of things you're not going to succeed. So it's about as important as it gets in my industry.
So I think that's really interesting because quality content's hard to rate, hard to make, right? It really is one of those things that would cause a lot of people a little bit of nervousness, right? Oh goodness, quality content. Do me a favor, get a little granular. Give me an example of what that means and what type of repetition should somebody really look to apply to that quality content.
Sure. So, look, let's get the basic stuff out of the way. So, obviously,
Good.
we know it needs to be grammatically written, and it needs to be grammatically correct. It needs to be written in the native language by someone who speaks the language fluently. That's the basic stuff.
That sounds like a really good. I'm just going to say, I think that really sounds important, right? So, if you're targeting, as an example, if English is not your first language and you're targeting a U.S. audience, you better be in that native language. That can be hard.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you want the reader, whenever they read a piece of your content, you don't want to put. So this is kind of how I explain it to people. Anyone who's reading a piece of content by you is looking for a reason to stop reading. And so they will move away from at any moment. If they find a big glaring grammatical error or a sentence that doesn't make sense, they have to read 3 times over. That's all they need to stop reading. So you have to get those basics down first.
And that and I got to tell you, Liam, that's the struggle, right? Because we talk about this a lot at ePresence. We got to think about your target audience. So you really have to think about what is your target audience looking for and speaking to them quickly and keeping their attention. So you got to put yourself in their shoes. You got to make sure you're speaking to what their needs are. And I would say that creates a lot of nervousness. And I tell you what, Morgan and so Morgan's the producer of this show. She's also does a lot of writing with ePresence. We're always trying to figure out how short we can get, right? How tight we can get something because we don't want to lose someone. We even space it out to make it look like it's easier to read because we're trying to make sure that we keep our audience engaged. So that is hard stuff. It's good to hear that it's important. Motivates me to make sure we keep doing it.
Well, you're right on the money with what I would call readability or something that's easy to read. That is exactly what matters. So when you are structuring your content, one of the worst things you can do is create a wall of text where you just write really long paragraphs with no subheaders or bullet points or images or video, nothing to break it up. That is death to your content. What you want to do is structure it in a way that I always kind of make it think of it of like someone pulling themselves along a rope, right? Like they should read a sentence and then they should, that sentence or paragraph should make them think, oh, I wonder what the next step is. And then you answer that next step for them in the very next paragraph so that it's a very natural experience for the reader to go from the headline all the way down to the final paragraph if they can make it that far. So doing that takes a lot of planning. And that's why the number one thing when I'm working with new clients or when I'm I do some training for freelancers who want to get better at SEO. The first thing I focus on is outlining your content, because if you just sit down and start writing, that might be good for thought leadership or opinion pieces. But if you're really trying to do SEO properly, you need to plan the content piece out so that it is going to be structured in the most logical possible way before you begin writing.
That's good. So if someone is listening to this right now and they're trying to find a way to produce that content, do you provide that help? Can you help write content for them, or do you just do SEO?
Oh yeah, no, that is the basics of my business is I create content strategies. So first I do all of the
Good.
research that's necessary to figure out what type of content is going to work for you, what kind of keywords you want to target. I know we're going to get into that a little bit later. And then once I offer that to my clients, usually they then hire me to actually execute that. So I do a lot of the writing myself. I have a team of some really trusty writers who I've trained that I work with as well if it's a high volume. But yeah, creating the content is the bulk of what I do for my long-term ongoing clients.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. Okay, so this probably happens some, and I think we fall in this category here at ePresence. We have a lot of content, right?
Mhm.
But some people just don't know it. When you have found, or how have you discovered, what does that look like? You walk into an organization, they're saying, we don't have any content, and all of a sudden you find this treasure trove of content. How do you discover that? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked because this is my current obsession. Is so many businesses, I don't think I've ever taken on a business that had absolutely zero content unless they were a brand new company. So most people have some content, but a lot of people have tried blogging over the past. They maybe did one blog or two blogs. Maybe they've even had one or two things go viral, but they haven't ever really had a strategy or a plan to actually make something out of that. That is wonderful when I see that because, or even if they haven't had something go viral, but they've tried to create content. And I'm going to get a little bit technical with you here, but basically, Google, it takes Google some time to recognize the content and understand the content on your website. And it really likes fresh content. So Google really rewards content that is new and fresh. But if you have an article that's maybe already done well in the past, but it's fallen off, people have stopped coming to it, or it's a good article, but you just didn't put your all into it, you can actually revisit that piece of content with someone who knows SEO and someone who's a good writer and have them revamp that piece of content. And because the piece of content already exists on your website and Google has already indexed it, if you publish that content again with all of this new content added to it and a new date and it's optimized for SEO, it's a lot faster to get traction on it than it would be if you were just starting from scratch with a brand new blog and a brand new URL.
Really?
So basically,
is that because is that because Google's used to that content? They say, hey, we kind of know this. Oh, there's new stuff to this content.
Yeah. So yes, exactly. Basically, when you create a brand new web page on your website, whether it's a blog article or a landing page, it just takes Google some time to figure that out. I could explain why in a technical way, but it's pretty boring. But just trust me, it takes a few weeks, at least a few weeks, if not a few months, for Google to figure out what that piece of content is about. So let's say you have a blog article on t-shirts, right? And you already wrote it a long time ago and you just kind of pumped it out and put it all live. And then you hire an SEO expert who's going to go back and optimize that piece of content. Google has already seen that piece of content on your website. It already probably knows that it's about t-shirts and that maybe at one point it was popular. And then when you update it and you put a new date on it, but keep the same URL, that's like sending a little flare gun up to Google to say, or to whatever search engine, to say, hey, I've changed this piece and it's a lot better now. And Google, since it already knows the piece and recognizes it, will go for it. That
is really cool. I did not know that. I figured if you reuse them, but what you are saying, and I was about to say something that's wrong, is you take a original blog, revamp it. By revamping it, it shows that it's new, but it still recognizes some of that as old, but still it breathes new life into it. So you can come into a company that has a bunch of old blogs and you can start working through those and start just creating new content. And the owner of the company or whoever, the marketing person, really doesn't have to put a lot of effort into giving you that content. And you can, is that true? Is that a correct statement?
Yes and no. So certainly it is easier. It depends.
For those of you that are listening on the podcast, of course, I'm watching Liam and he has this look like, that's not quite true.
Well, it all depends on how well written the first piece of content was in the first place.
Oh, wow. Okay.
when you do this, so first of all, let me say there's a blog on my website if anybody is interested. It's a case study where I walk through exactly how I did this for my clients and what the results look like. But
wow.
when you do this kind of a thing, you need to add a significant amount of content to it. So I say about 30 to 40% fresh content that can either be rewritten content or in addition to what you already have there. So you do need to do some work. You can also up your chances of improving the content piece by adding more imagery or maybe inserting a video, adding some internal links to other content that you've created in the meantime. So there is some work that has to go into it, but it is easier to work from something that's already there. And this is not just something that you do at the beginning of a content strategy. It certainly is where I like to go first because it's quick wins. But if you have a healthy content strategy and you're the kind of person who is, really committed to content, you will be able to, for my clients, every month I go through their content from 6 months to a year ago and look and see how it's doing. And if any of them are starting to fall off, because that's what happens naturally, it's called content decay. When an article is older, it naturally starts to lose its traction with organic search. I always look back because even if I wrote the article and it performed really well, if it's falling, it's an opportunity to give it some new life. So you always want to be looking at your old content, even if you're a pro at content strategy.
So we've talked a little bit about this, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the anatomy of content strategy. And so we kind of tease at that. But what's the most important elements? I mean, we got to back up. Content strategy. Well, you should define it. Tell me what content strategy is, and then how do you identify the most important elements of that content strategy?
Sure. This is really my bread and butter. So content strategy is basically coming up with a short-term and long-term plan to make your content perform in the way that you want it to make, and you use data to inform that plan. So every business will have different goals. A lot of times it's about bringing in organic traffic. That's why people hire me, because they want more traffic to their website, and that's what SEO does. But also it might be things like getting people to sign up for our email list, or getting more purchases, or launching this new product, whatever it may be. That all fits under content strategy. Now, when I create content strategies, the only way to do it is to make sure you have all of the right data to inform the plan before you execute it. So that involves several different steps for me. The first one is just a quick SEO audit of your current website, looking at where there may be some technical problems that are holding you back or some missed opportunities, just to get that out of the way first. Then we focus on keyword data. That's a big part of the project, where I use my super secret SEO tools to look at keyword volume and difficulty, find out all of the keyword opportunities that are out there so that we know what people are actually looking for as it relates to your business.
Hey, Liam, real quick, what makes a word a keyword? What does that really mean?
So it's what people search for when they go onto Google or any other search engine. So just look at the last 10 things you've Googled. Those are all keywords. Now, when we use it in SEO, we're usually talking about keywords that have a specific amount of volume. So how many people search for a certain keyword every month? So, for me, recently, let's see, I'm writing a blog today about how to be easygoing for one of my clients. And, surprisingly, that is a keyword that people search about 9,000 times a month.
What?
So
easygoing is?
How to be easygoing. Yeah, how to be easygoing.
Darn.
Yeah.
Morgan, I probably need to search for that, don't I? We got to put the
I'll
show
send
notes.
you the blog. I'll send you the blog.
Send that to me. I'd like to see that. Good.
Yeah. So we get the keyword data in there so that we understand what your customers are looking for. And then I like to, I think I already said, I like to look at your competitors as well. So we want to take a look at your top 3 to 4 competitors. What are they doing with content? What's working for them? What's getting them the most traffic, for inspiration, and also as like an advisory of what not to do. That's usually the part that my clients like the most, because who doesn't like to spy on their competitors?
I do.
Sign
me up.
Everybody does. That's like that's so fun. And um, I think after that, though, is probably what's the most important part, which is the audience profiles. So that is when we take everything that we know about your audience and I do the research to find out what is going to resonate with those people and why. What topics, where are those people hanging out online? What kind of interactions do they like? What kind of content are they most likely to enjoy? And when I talk about discovering your audience, I'm not talking about things like their age and their gender and their location. That is important, but what I really like to get to the heart of is what's stressing them out, what's keeping them awake at night, what brings them joy, what's their day-to-day like. Those kinds of questions are a lot more informative for a content strategy than just basic demographics. So we want to make sure we have a really core idea of who your audience is.
Now, tell me this. You find out who that audience is. How have you used, once you understand that sort of the nitty-gritty of who the audience is, how do you take that and optimize SEO so that that audience is, that your client is better connecting to that audience? What does that look like?
Sure. Well, let me use one of my clients as an example. They're called Rounded. They're an accounting software for freelancers. So obviously their audience is freelancers, and that's a pretty general term. So I started to do some research into that, and I kind of found that freelancers fall into different groups. So you have what I call the freelancer curious, who are people who maybe are stuck at their day job and are thinking about freelancing. You have the beginners who are doing it, just starting out. And then you have people who are experienced for years. And those three groups of people need different information. The first group of people who haven't even started freelancing yet, they need the most basic information. What is freelancing? What is a sole trader? How much money can I make? How do I get started? People in their first year of freelancing, they need information like, how do I save more money on my taxes? How do I market my business a little bit better? And then the people who are experienced, they might need things like, how do I save more money for retirement? How do I start leading, how do I create my own course? So depending on which segment of the audience you're talking to, you need to understand, what are they worried about? What are their fears? What are their anxieties, so that you can address those with your content and really get to them.
That is, I think, is unbelievable. And here's what I love about this. And it kind of harkens back to something I was mentioning earlier. You got to figure out, how do you best communicate with your audience? And if you know what their fears are, if you know what's keeping them up at night, if you know all of this data, then you can format your content to speak to that. We constantly talk about, especially like on a LinkedIn profile in the About section, that you should start off that About section speaking to your audience, not talking about you. So you don't want to say, I am Liam Carnahan, and I am the greatest, blah, blah. Yeah, yes, we know that. Nobody's going to find that engaging because it's not about them. So you're doing this in a very specific way. You know what those pain points are because you've already identified that, and then you can contour the blog post to speak directly to what those concerns are. It's a basic, but it's also brilliant. When you do that, what do you see happening on the what are the type of engagement or what type of search results happen when you're able to build something like that? How does that change things?
Yeah, it changes everything because, most of the people who come to me for a content strategy have already tried, what I would call scattershot content. So they, create blogs. There's a lot of guessing. We think our audience likes this. We think our audience wants this. And they end up wasting a lot of money with guessing and paying for this kind of content creation based on a hunch. When you have a strategy that uses data and your competitors' data and all of that, you are much more likely to. It's just like shooting a direct targeted missile rather than just kind of blowing things up. You really go right for the heart of the matter. Now, in terms of results, if you're pairing this with SEO, and you do all the things that you need to do for SEO, which is create this really quality content, make sure that your site's working well, make sure that you're getting backlinks.
Right.
For some of my clients, I've seen like a 77% increase in traffic to their website. So
Terrific.
that's pretty massive. That's, a huge,
That's not just
large.
massive. That's huge. There's
Yeah.
no
I mean,
business person watching this today that would say, "Oh, that's not good enough." That's fantastic.
I mean, obviously it varies. It depends on the power of your website and how willing you are to do the things that you need to do. But if you're
Right.
willing to play the game with me, then you will see massive returns, especially if you're doing nothing at the moment. If you're
Right.
doing nothing or doing that sort of scattershot content, it's like night and day. I mean, it's like, look, I'm not a sports guy. I hate sports analogies, but like, there's a reason that they have strategies before they go out on the game field.
Right.
And it's
Right.
the same with content creation.
So, how long does it take in general? And I know this is a broad brush, but if you take on a new client, what type of timeline are you looking at on the SEO side before they start to see some kind of change, improvement, or even a return?
Yeah, that's the eternal question that everybody wants to know. So let me say
That's why
this.
I asked that.
I'll be real with you. So if you have technical problems on your website, like your website's really, really slow, and that's going to stop you from ever having any SEO power at all. That might be why you have no traffic coming to your website.
Oh,
So
okay.
sometimes
Hold on.
there's,
Wait for this. I'm sorry. It's that important. If your website is slow, you're basically wasting your money, spending money on SEO. Is that what you're saying?
yes, I am
Wow.
saying that. Yeah, you need to have
Okay.
a
All right.
fast functioning. I mean, that's one of the things that Google looks for first.
Okay.
If your website takes more than a few seconds to load, and even more than 1 or 2 seconds to load, you're going to be penalized for that. And so, that's going to really hold you back. So sometimes
Great.
I'm able to go into a client and I just look under the hood of their website and it's a mess. And just like a mechanic, I can plug this in here and download that plugin and fix that. And then suddenly there's an instant return. So that's
Wow.
one way to do it.
Awesome.
But with content creation, you need to be more patient. Content creation is a marathon, not a race. So you need to, like I said, if you're creating a fresh piece of content, at the minimum, it's going to take Google about 3 months to really recognize that piece of content and start to rank it properly. And that's if
you're really talking about being patient. 3 months?
Yeah, I am talking about
Okay.
being patient. But it's about a long-term investment, right? So one
Right.
piece of content that begins to rank can bring you traffic for years, especially if you do what I say and update it. So it's an investment, and it's a long-term game. But it's also a snowball effect. So the more content you create, the more social promotion you do of that content, the more backlinks you acquire.
Yeah.
Each time it gets easier and easier and easier until the snowball is rolling downhill really fast. And every time you publish something, it's much, much quicker. But if you're starting out new with me, that's something I say to my clients ahead of time is I say, you're not going to see results from this tomorrow.
Right.
But there are ways to make sure you're moving in the right direction. So I can give my clients, I always give them assurances. I'm able to see things moving in the right direction, but the traffic won't start coming in, usually for a few months.
I think that makes total sense. And I'm not shocked by that. That whole smack my head thing was just for dramatic effect. I'm very dramatic. Well, this is good. So I have one more question. We're technically out of time, but I'm going to ask this question anyway. What are some of those SEO mythbusters out there? People have false notions about SEO. What have you found are those biggest misconceptions?
Okay, so the number one misconception is that SEO is only for the big dogs and that it doesn't work for small businesses or medium-sized businesses. My entire business is focused on small and medium-sized businesses, so I wouldn't be employed if it didn't work for smaller businesses. Also, there's a weird obsession with the number of keywords and how many keywords you use in an article, and people go crazy thinking about it and that they think that that's the most important element. Not true. The most important thing, I always have to say this to people, is that it's high quality and written for your audience. The keywords will fit in naturally if you write high quality content, and you should never compromise the quality of a piece of content just to squeeze in another keyword. So if you're listening to this, take a chill pill. Don't worry about how many keywords you manage to fit. Just make it a good piece of content, and that will bring you the reward.
No, that's good. Awesome stuff. So, Liam, this has been a great conversation. You've shared such incredible info. I really, really think this is good. Share with us, where should people find you if they're interested in hearing more about what you have to offer?
Sure. So the best place to find out everything you want to know about me and my services is on my website, which is just inkwellcontent.com. You can see my blog and all of my services and some testimonials and all that good stuff, my portfolio. But I'm also very big on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day. I post free tips pretty much every day about SEO and content. And I just love chatting with people on there. So if you want some free advice and also to see me use like a lot of emojis, just come and see me on LinkedIn.
So do emojis help in search?
I use them on LinkedIn for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's part of my brand. I have, I have a bit of a fun, cheeky side of my brand, though it doesn't sound very fun when you call it that. And then it also is a way to break up content. So we were talking about the importance of making your content digestible. Right. I use my emojis like a checklist. So when you're going through my content, you can see emoji, fact, emoji, fact, emoji, fact. Really easy to consume, and people recognize my style when they see me online.
I gotcha. I think that's awesome. Liam, this was a great chat. I appreciate you and making some time to visit with the ePresence audience here. And the content you just shared, speaking of content, is absolutely terrific. So let's stay in touch.
Sure.
We think you're going to be able to agree. You're going to join us for our May recap show, which is going to be on the first Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So we'll see you there to do a little bit of a recap of this show. But thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
I had a great time, and I will definitely be there. So I'll see you in a few weeks.
I love that. And hang out. I'd love to chat with you just after the show. Sure. So we'll talk to you in a few moments here.
All right.
Now, for the rest of you, this is the last week for the webinar. So you definitely want to consider this. Here's why I would consider joining this webinar, is because we help people optimize their LinkedIn profile. We go through the 5 key things of what you should focus on your LinkedIn profile. And we don't just say, here are the 5 things. We say, here are the 5 things, and this is how you can make them better. Like I mentioned the about section before, we go through very specifically what you should do to write the perfect about section. And some of you may be scratching your head. That's been referred to, even LinkedIn calls it the summary section still. It is only the about section. So that's the section just below your name. If you're out of work, you're furloughed, you're looking for a new job, you're trying to get a promotion, you should optimize your LinkedIn profile. It's an hour. You'll get one-on-one attention. I'll put your profile right on the screen and talk specifically about that. Or maybe you're a salesperson. You want to reach more people. You want to grow your audience. Like Liam was talking about. He's using LinkedIn for that. You can join us. We'll show you how to optimize your profile so that when someone lands on it, they want to do business with you. What's the cost? $37.50. It is last one this Friday. Last one. So if you're listening to this show and you're 2 weeks out, it's been 2 weeks since the show was run, it's too late. Sorry about that. But we did it for a year. If you're interested in maybe us doing it in the future, let us know. We'll consider dropping more of those in the future. Thank you for joining us here on How's Your ePresence. Curious about ePresence? ePresence is a full-service social media agency. We take care of company, individual social media, you name it. Like companies, you got to keep active. Liam was talking about this, creating great content. You need to create great content for your social media. And maybe Liam can write you a great blog, get your website really running. We can help push content back to your social media account so that back to your website so that great content reaches even more people. We also optimize the whole executive suite. So if you're a CEO or a CMO of a company, you're busy, you don't have time to manage your social media, we can do that for you. We also help college students. We have a new feature that we're offering called eForensics, where we are going in and we're helping attorneys. They need to do a whole bunch of research on social media for their clients. We will do that for them and provide them a report that shows them what's important about the social media for either their clients or the opposition. That's a new thing. Interested in anything we do? Join us. Go to our websites, epresence.me, epresence.me, because it's all about you. Now back to the show here. How's your ePresence? It's everywhere. You can catch us live here on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Please subscribe. Either follow the channel you're on or subscribe here. Wait a minute, I just like subscribe on YouTube so you know when we go live. We're always adding new content, and we have live content as well as dropping. Every show ends up being dropped as a podcast, so you can catch us everywhere. We're on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud. You can find all our podcasts at epresence.me/podcasts. Well, this show is produced by ePresence. Our producer, writer, and extraordinarily wonderful person, Morgan Wood, is on the background. Morgan, thank you so much for all the work that you do for ePresence, not just this show. Until next time, for my guest, Liam Carnahan, I'm Mark Galvin, and this has been How's Your ePresence?